Are men really supposed to rule over women? Some people think so, and if they do, they probably use this verse today in Genesis chapter 3 to get there. Let's talk about it, because I don't think that's what it's supposed to be about. And really, are we really supposed to emulate a curse? As God lays into the first woman and the first man and talks about the repercussions of sin, we're going to unpack what it looks like for our relationships moving forward. Genesis 3:16 through 24. To the woman, God said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire will be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. God drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. Genesis 4:1 through 7 and 25 through 26. Now Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions, and the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do not do well, will not you be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth, for she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. And at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Okay, there's several key points I want to bring up in comparing and contrasting here. We're in the kind of the curse sequence still. Last week, God talked to the serpent. Now he's talking to the woman and to the man, and then driving them out toward the east, which is a really key theme. Cain also is gone away to the east of Eden. So there's probably three different threads I want to just draw together really quickly. One, this word pain that shows up I find really fascinating. Doing a deep dive into the Hebrew here. So this word pain is the same word that the man given. So she says Eve is going to have pain in childbearing. And then here, Adam, or the man, is going to have pain through his labor and toil on the earth. And what's interesting is the Hebrew word that's chosen here is not the normal word for pain. There's another word for pain that's more just sheer physical pain. And while this one can mean physical pain, and we know childbearing is very painful, it actually has a bit more of an emotional component to this. This is like heartache. And so I think it's an interesting way. It's through heartache and depression and sadness that you will toil, you will bring forth children. I see this, going flash forward to the New Testament, where Mary, the mother of Jesus, is told by the prophet, a sword will pierce your own heart because of this son. She's going to have to watch her only son die. In the same way, Eve, not only does she have to endure the pain of childbirth, but the very next scene is her first son killing her second son. The pain of that kind of heartache, the pain of sin is much more far-reaching than just physical pain. And you could say the same thing for the toil and labor that humanity has to now endure to just make a living in this world. So there's a lot going on there. The other one that I intentionally kept with the ESV, because a lot of my community still uses that translation. And in a lot of ways, it is a great translation. It's very literal. I really do like the ESV more and more. Except, and I'm going to keep trying this out, to my mind, and it's not just me, they keep messing up some of these key passages that have to do with men and women. The actual Hebrew here is much simpler than this. It says, your desire will be toward your husband, but he will rule over you. You can look at every other English translation. No one has this word contrary. I just don't understand why you would have that there. Your desire will be toward your husband, but he will rule over you. Actually, it's the same phrase that shows up here. Cain is confronted by God, and God says, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is toward you, but you must rule over it. Same phrase as here. This word contrary, I don't think is necessary for the context. But what's going on in this story? God is describing the effects of sin. Because of sin, what's going to happen is your desire, your full fulfillment, your meaning, your hope in life, you're going to be looking toward your husband for your fulfillment. He's telling Eve this. And while in a relationship, we absolutely get fulfillment from our spouse, we should never be at a place where they are our sole source of fulfillment. Because actually, Eve should have been looking toward God to get her true identity, her true source of fulfillment, and then working in tandem, in partnership. So with man and woman working together, but looking toward God for their fulfillment. Instead, God is not giving a mandate. He's not giving a law. He's saying, this is how things are going to be because you have chosen to try to do life without me. Women, what might very likely happen is that you're going to, instead of looking to God, look to the man for your fulfillment. And sadly, this is again part of the curse. This is not a mandate, but he will rule over you is not what he's supposed to do. It's in his fallen state, he's going to take advantage of that. He's going to do that even though he shouldn't. And so there's a sense that both of them are warped now. I've heard preachers use this passage to say, in a sense, that man and women are supposed to be in some sort of hierarchy, that Eve is supposed to be under Adam and Adam is supposed to be ruling over him, and that's fulfilling his own mandate. I don't think that this is a curse. We should not be trying to fulfill the curse. God is describing how fallen humanity is going to operate. He's saying this is how it's going to happen, but you should fight against that. Yes, women may in fact try to find all of their worth and fulfillment from their husband, and husbands may in fact use that to their own advantage. Men in general, not just husbands, may use that and rule over them. None of that is godly and God-oriented, so we should fight against that. And then in the same sense, when Cain is about to murder his brother, God warns him. And now he uses this idea of sin like a crouching snake. Sin is crouching at your door like a cobra, and its desire is also for you in a similar way that's going on over here, but you must rule over it. It's almost like the serpent came in chapter 3, verse 1, and it was this external opposition. And then in chapter 3, verse 16 and following, the serpent became this individual internal opposition. Internally, the serpent has now seeped into the marriage and is turning husband against wife and vice versa. And then in chapter 4, the serpent has become maybe a little more system-wide. Now it's not just between a husband and wife, but it's now seeping into the whole family, into the extended family, into brother against brother. And so there's this idea that the serpent who is trying to master you, but you must master it, is seeping into all of these relationships. One last thread that I've studied more recently that's been really fascinating, but this opening line in chapter 4, Adam knew his wife, she conceived and said, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. Now, the Hebrew back behind that is kind of ambiguous, but significant. And it's different than the way that she describes giving birth to her next son over here at the end of chapter 4. There she says, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. We don't have a lot of time to unpack this, but the phrase behind this, I have gotten a help, and it uses an interesting word that's really kind of, I have gotten a man just like God is a way that you could put that. I've gotten a man next to God. And it seems, as at least a little hint here, that what she is actually saying is, wow, I just made another human being. I'm kind of like God, which, to her credit, she's the first person on earth to ever do that, so that makes sense. But there might be just a little hint of pridefulness in the way that she phrases this sentence. The ESV and many English translations have turned it into, God has helped me do this. But that word help isn't there. It's really, I've gotten a man next to God or just like God. And so maybe that part of the pride here is seeping in, because by the end she's been humbled, and through pain she's now witnessed her son's kill, one son kill another, and her tone shifts here. It really is giving all glory to God. God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel. God has given me this gift. And so she's giving glory to God. And by the end of the chapter is the first time people begin to call upon the name of the Lord. So that's an interesting, maybe I'll just throw that out there to raise some curiosity, ask some questions. The bigger thing that I wanted to bring out was both this idea of pain, but especially the way that the serpent now is seeping in from the external, sitting in the tree, deceiving Eve and Adam, to seeping into the marriage itself, to then infecting all of our relationships. Sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is toward us, but we must rule over it. We don't have to live that way. We don't have to give in to that kind of divisiveness.